Alright, so welcome back to Dell of Merchants Collection. So for this video, I'm going to be talking about the fickle giant pangolins. Now there's a lot of new aspects, new rules that revolve around these cards especially, and so we'll go over how these new functions and rules work with these cards before we start talking about the pangolins themselves. You'll notice I already have something set up here. This is a discard pile, this is a hand of cards, and this is a deck, okay? So this is player 2's deck, player 2's discard pile, player 2's hand. This is player 1's deck, player 1's hand, and player 1's discard pile. Now, I didn't put any junk cards in here, but I just basically took two of the merchant sets and formed a deck, a hand, and a discard pile as this demonstration. Now, these dice, okay, they have three different symbols on them, okay? You'll notice one has sort of like a trash can almost look to it. That identifies the discard pile, okay? So that identifies the discard pile. This one over here that sort of looks like a desk identifies the deck, okay? So I'll put that there. Then the third symbol on this dice has the paw on it, okay? That identifies the hand, okay? Now, there's also another thing to explain about these dice besides just simply what the different sided dice means, all the different stuff on it. The light green one is your source dice. Your dark green dice is known as the destination dice, okay? So, let's use it for instance, because a lot of the pangolin cards are going to describe source and destination. If a card says, if the card says you're going to put a card from your source, okay, to a different player's destination, okay? So let's say the different player's destination is the discard pile. So this is the different player's destination, and this is the deck right here, and this is the source's deck, okay? You're going to take a card from the source's deck to the destination, the different player's destination. So, you know, for instance, the discard pile, because that's what was rolled, okay? So basically, then that means you would be, you know, taking a card from here and putting it there. Makes sense, right? The card is coming from the source, and it's going to a destination, and that was just what the destination was. So that's what's going to happen. Maybe you don't want that to happen because it's your deck over here, and that's your opponent's discard pile. So you're helping him out in a sense. Now, of course, that means that it can also be the exact opposite. And so the pangolins, they are also very nasty. Now, they are a nasty card for sure, a nasty animal merchant, an aggressive strategy. But they're also a destructive strategy because you can accidentally hurt yourself if you're not careful. You can be the player who's you're basically attacking yourself if you're playing with these cards. You can basically be attacking yourself. So this one you really have to think about before you even think about playing it, because you have to think twice, because otherwise you might end up helping your opponent out instead of helping yourself out. So that's something to note. But basically you understand what deck, hand, and discard pile means, and source and destination, okay? So now that we've described that and talked about that, we can finally start talking about the pangolins and what they do with their cards, okay? So, obviously, the first one here is the fumbling dreamer. You'll roll the source die, and I will always refer to it as the source or destination die. So just know the light green is the source, and the destination is the dark green. So you'll roll the source die, and you'll also roll the destination die. You'll re-roll the destination die until you have a different result on both dice. Place a card from any player's source into their destination. Okay, so let's do that. From any player's source into their destination. So let's roll the dice to explain this better. Okay, so the 2 dice that popped out were actually the exact same ones. So that means I have to re-roll the destination die until I get a different side of the die. Okay, we got a different side of the die. So here we have the discard pile, and here we have the hand, okay? So you're going to place a card from any player's source into their destination. So let's say I'm player 1, I can choose to basically put the source die on my opponent's hand, if you will, and the destination die here will go to their discard pile. Okay, and then I'll place a card from that source. So that means I won't get to look at their cards. I'll just get to randomly choose one to take from that source, which is their hand, putting it into their destination, which is the discard pile. So that's basically what's going to happen if you play with the Fumbling Dreamer. So you can use it to your advantage. Maybe it's maybe the source is your deck and the destination is your hand. If that's the case, then you could do it to yourself, getting to add a card from your deck to your hand. So that would be a very useful way of using the card. But it could also be a bad thing, too. You could be taking a card from your hand and putting it in the discard pile, and if that was the case, then you're going to want to do it to your opponent, obviously not you. But basically, that's how the Fumbling Dreamer works, okay? So that should explain that pretty well. All right, so that's 1 down. Okay. So the next one is the Coffee Grinder, and this one's easier to explain. This is a passive ability, the only passive ability the pangolins have, okay? Now, you may choose any player and discard up to 2 cards from their deck, 1 by 1, once in your turn. So if you have 2 of these sitting in your hand, 2 Coffee Grinders sitting in your hand, you can still only do this passive ability once, but it doesn't take up an action to do so. You can just simply say, I have a passive ability called Coffee Grinder, so you over there, you player 1, you are going to discard up to 2 cards from your deck, 1 by 1, one at a time, and putting them, obviously, into your discard pile. But you're only going to get to do it once. But that's how Coffee Grinder is going to work. Obviously, that's super easy to understand. Definitely a lot easier than the last one, to say the least. Okay. This one is Accident. Look at the top card of your deck, then exchange it with 1 random card from any player's hand. Well, that's interesting. This could definitely backfire, because you don't know what is the top card of your deck. It could be a junk card, and then if it was, you get to exchange it with 1 random card from a player's hand. So maybe it's a junk card, you place it into their hand. Obviously, you get to take 1 random card from your opponent's hand, and then, that's really cool, and exchange it. So then it would go to the top of your deck. So you're exchanging it. So it's going to the same place where the other card came from, which it was the deck, obviously. But that's what's going to happen with Accident. Now, Accident can backfire. Maybe the top card is a good card. You still have to do it. After you look at the top card of your deck, you will still have to put this card into your opponent's hand and then take 1 random card from their hand. And maybe it's a junk card. Ouch! Now you're putting that junk card on top of your deck. So that was definitely an accident, to say the least. And definitely you understand how this card can definitely backfire on you. And obviously you're definitely going to want to be careful with this one. But once you play it, it's all over. So the damage is done one way or the other. To your opponent or to you. One or the other, it's going to happen. Of course, maybe you get lucky and the top card is a junk card, and your opponent gets lucky, the card you take is a junk card. That could also happen. So then maybe nothing happens at all. Nothing really, anyway. But basically, that's how Accident is going to work. Now you understand how Accident works. Okay. The next one is called Loose Marbles. And this one also works with the dice. You'll roll the source die and destination die. You'll place a card from any player's source into a different player's destination. Okay, so let's roll the dice. And so the source die is the discard pile, and the destination is the hand. So, for instance, let's say, and remember, the destination has to be a different player from the source, okay? So let's say I'm player 2, okay? And let's say I'm player 2, so I'm going to put the source die, basically, on player 1's discard pile, and put the destination die, because it has to be, a different player. I'm going to put that onto my hand, because I'm a different player from player 1. Well, then I'd get to take the card from the discard pile and place it into the destination, which is my hand. So that's really cool, right? So that's how it's going to work. Now, of course, it could still backfire, so you're going to have to be careful. Let's say, for instance, I don't know, let's say the source is the deck. Or let's say the source is actually the hand. Okay? The source is the hand. You could put the source here, or should I say you could put the source on your opponent's hand, and then let's say the destination is the hand as well, because that would also be allowed here too, because they don't have to be different here. So basically you could be taking a card from your opponent's hand and then putting the destination, which is your hand, here. So that's really cool. So obviously that's really an interesting strategy for sure to do that. But once again, you have to be careful because it could backfire. It could be different for you as well. But at least you get to choose which player you do it to and all that. So that's really cool. So that's how loose marbles is going to work. Okay. So, next one. Let's see here. A fresh start. Let's do that one. That one's easier to understand. We'll save one of the hardest ones for last. So, fresh start. Another action with a plus action icon on it. Of course, not that the others haven't been having plus actions on them either. They all have, except for the passive ability, obviously, because it doesn't need it. Choose any player to shuffle their discard pile into their deck. Then take the top card from any player's deck and place it into your hand. So a fresh start could be something good. You could make your opponent shuffle their discard pile into their deck. And then afterwards, you'll take the top card from their deck and you'll get to place it into your hand. So now I've got the alternative play in my hand, for instance. That's really cool. Of course, you don't know what the top card will be, so it could be a junk card, and now the fresh start just gave you a junk card. So it backfired. You can hurt yourself with this card too by giving yourself extra junk cards. So be careful with your fresh start. So that's for sure. Okay, so now there's just one more left to talk about. Another fine mess. With this one, you'll roll the source die and destination die and place 2 cards from any player's source into a different player's destination and shuffle it. Place as many cards from the chosen destination into the chosen source. So you have to be really careful with this one. This one could definitely backfire in a lot of ways. It could definitely be another fine mess. Let's roll the dice, though. Okay, so the source is the discard pile, and the destination is the deck. Okay, remember, the source has to be different from the other player. So one player is going to get the destination, and one player is going to get the source. You get to choose, of course, who gets the source and who gets the destination. Okay, so let's see here. Let's say I'm player 2, so I'm going to put this here. Player 1 gets the source dice, which is the discard pile, and I get the destination, which is the deck. Okay? Well, you're going to take the top 2 cards, so let's say the top 2, one of them is one of those, and then the other top card of the discard pile is a junk card. Well, then you're going to put them into the destination, which is the deck. You're going to shuffle them, okay? After you shuffle it, then you'll place as many cards from the chosen destination back into the chosen source. So it may not even be the cards you just put there. It could be two completely different cards that are now going to go back into the source, which was your opponent's discard pile. Now you can see how that can be advantageous. You could end up putting two junk cards into their deck. They're shuffling their deck, and then you get two really good cards from their deck, which they will now have to put back into your discard pile. That can definitely be useful for you and definitely be an aggressive strategy against your opponent. But like I said, it can backfire, and you can, for instance, you can do this card and it ends up being two really good cards and no junk cards. You put them into your opponent's deck, your opponent shuffles the deck, and then you draw two cards from their deck, putting it into your discard pile, which just happened to be junk cards. So once again, another fine mess indeed for you. So it's another fine mess one way or the other. It will definitely be another fine mess. And of course, if you are putting the cards into the discard pile from the deck or the hand, or even the other discard pile, you're going to shuffle the discard pile and then draw the top two cards of your discard pile. And so that means you're still shuffling it. You're going to shuffle it, even if it's your hand, it will shuffle anyways, and then you'll take two cards from there to put back to another location. But that's how it's going to work. Regardless of the case, it doesn't necessarily mean that shuffle only works for the deck. It will work for the hand and for the discard pile when you're playing with this card. It means both locations as well as the deck. So that's something to also note about this card. But definitely, this one is definitely a more dangerous card to play with, that is for sure. Because it's still the luck of the draw, as well as what just happens to be lying in your deck, your hand, or your discard pile for that matter. So this is definitely another fine mess to watch out for sure. And that is how these pangolins function. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys liked my explanation of how these guys work, don't forget to leave a like. And I still have one more I'm going to do today. One more animal folk merchant I'm going to talk about today. And that'll be that. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys for watching.